Okay, welcome back to the Mining Pod. We are joined today by Tatum and Matt. We're going to go through this week's Bitcoin mining news. There's a decent amount of Bitcoin news this week, which was refreshing. Sometimes I feel like there's not quite enough weekly, but we do got some stuff going on. First, we're going to go through the Foreman versus Lancium lawsuit that first came out in May, but there has been an update regarding a claim to IP. We're going to go through that first. Then we're going to go over and talk about some new inscriptions on the Bitcoin blockchain pertaining to Julian Assange. Go through BitVM. BitVM has been blowing up on Bitcoin Twitter this week. A lot of people have questions about it. We're going to go through like the Bitcoin mining angle and why it matters for Bitcoin miners on this podcast. Definitely some other links and people that we will shout out later they should check out in terms of like the tech stack itself. And then lastly, we're going to go to a New York Times article that came out this morning talking about how Chinese Bitcoin miners might be a threat to national security. That's not our opinion, but that's the New York Times opinion. So let's dig into it.
Did you know that you can make more money by merge mining other networks? Check out makemoremoneymining.com for information on BIPs 300 and 301, a proposal to bring more revenue to Bitcoin miners through sidechains and merge mining called drive chains. Increase your mining revenues and learn more about participating in Bitcoin governance by visiting makemoremoneymining.com. Are you a miner who wants to activate Bitcoin improvements? Check out Activation.Watch. See what Bitcoin improvements the Bitcoin community, developers, and miners are considering, and show support by signaling for one of many BIPs up for consideration. Activation.Watch.
Is your mining operation happening ready? Take control of your own future with the right energy strategy. Lincoin Energy Trading Platform is a tool used by miners to design, monitor, and seamlessly orchestrate sophisticated energy strategies within electricity markets such as ERCOT, New York, and PJM. Avoid penalties, participate in demand response programs, and capture hundreds of thousands of dollars per megawatt per year by deploying the right block and index strategy. Secure your competitive edge at lincoin.com.
Hey Mining Pod, I'm Lee Bratcher, President of the Texas Blockchain Council. The Texas Blockchain Summit is now the North American Blockchain Summit. The same emphasis on policy, energy, and Bitcoin mining, but now expanded by working with our partners across the country. We've got great sponsors lined up like Riot, Marathon, GDA, CleanSpark, BitDeer, Lancium, Foreman, Compass, HTS, Crypto Power, Priority Power, Sonoda, and many more. Solidify your next deal or JV, or just come for the networking on November 15th through 17th in Fort Worth, Texas, for the third annual North American Blockchain Summit. We'll see you there.
Are you a retail or institutional investor interested in Bitcoin mining companies? The Miner Mag brings you free data and analysis from all major NASDAQ-listed Bitcoin mining operations to know who stands out. Check out visualized metrics and data-dependent stories at theminermag.com.
Foreman Mining back in May filed a lawsuit against Lancium. Lancium is a Bitcoin mining company that mostly focuses on the software stack pertaining to demand response. A lot of people use their demand response technology. There's a patent around it. So a lot of these public miners use this technology. This is great for Lancium because they have a licensing fee. They're able to earn a lot of money. Demand response is obviously a huge thing, especially in electricity markets like Texas. But there's other Bitcoin miners and Bitcoin mining companies that want to be able to sell this sort of software as well for license. Foreman being one of them, and Foreman filed a lawsuit in May around this. We have an update this week where Foreman went ahead and filed something new asking for the patent around this license for Lancium to be pulled back. Now, it's not in the public right now. This is just between the two entities. So the only people who have access to this information are the two companies, but I'm sure this will come out in the next few weeks. For me, the most interesting part about this is Bitcoin mining is an extremely competitive market, maybe one of the most competitive markets out there. Yet on different levels, there are pockets of monopolistic tendencies. We're seeing one right here with this licensing fee that Lancium has because it got there first and filed a patent on top of this technology. Going to throw over to you, Matt. You were talking about this a little bit earlier. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to pretend like I know much of anything about intellectual property law. But I mean, what this kind of made me think about is the potential for kind of like regulatory capture in some mining circles and how it kind of fits with licensures and legal kind of abilities, right? I mean, this is just over a patent, but depending on your jurisdiction, if you're mining in a certain place, you might need a certain license from the like a national government to even consume a certain amount of energy, right? Or to participate in a demand response program, you might need a certain relationship with the grid operators. And so there could be kind of like an exclusive angle to some of these aspects that can help a miner in a very tightly margined competitive industry. So something just to kind of keep in mind moving forward for me, I guess. That's kind of what it made me think of. Tatum?
Yeah, in the same sense, I'm not all that knowledgeable on, law and all that stuff. But I mean, especially in the past year or so, we've seen miners directly, like more directly interacting with energy providers, like main one everyone thinks of is ERCOT, and how they are basically kind of saving the entire state at points. And I think that this is something that is going to be very helpful, but it's also going to, I feel like, cause a little hiccups with these big mining facilities that may rely on some of this, and changing infrastructure is going to not be, it's never going to be a smooth transition, but it's definitely needed. And I don't know, it's kind of weird to see this shake out. Bitcoin mining as an industry is so young, like younger than Bitcoin, and we're kind of just seeing the industry standard get built in front of our eyes. And I don't know, it's going to be weird to see it shake out.
The patent stuff is interesting to me because you see this in other industries as well, right? Where patents are put up, but they're just big walls within industry. Patents exist for a reason. On the other hand, software like this isn't so novel that you can't anticipate someone else being able to, like, making this. And it just almost seems like someone got there first and that's why they got it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with this. There's a lot of different pool companies or middleware companies, if you will, that want to build technology like this. And that Lancium patent is just right in the way of all those companies. So I'm looking forward to seeing some sort of resolution with that. Who knows what will happen with it. Okay, let's move over to this Julian Assange information. I'm going to pull up this Bitcoin Magazine article. Quote, someone is inscribing all of WikiLeaks' infamous Afghan war logs on Bitcoin. The subheader reads, an unknown project, Spartacus, has formed an attempt to immortalize on Bitcoin the thousands of Afghan war logs published by Julian Assange's WikiLeaks in 2010. The TLDR here is Bitcoin is being used for putting unfavorable information towards the government on chain. It's going to be stored there forever. And I think it's a pretty cool instance of Bitcoin being used for something other than money. It's being used as censorship resistant tech.
Yeah, I think I find this actually really cool because it's honestly like, it's kind of like just a little gentle reminder that, like, it's going to happen. Whoever's doing it. What was it called again? What was the project name again?
I think Spartacus.
Spartacus. It's using like a direct example with the war logs of like something that's already been leaked out there. It's like, hey, we're putting this permanently and just kind of reminding everyone, like, hey, we can do this. You can't stop it, no matter if you like it or not. It is going to happen. And it also is just the beauty of Bitcoin just being an immutable ledger that is out there. It's public. And anyone who wants to put something on there can. And if they want to bad enough, they will.
And ordinals makes this easier, right? So I remember this happening with Bitcoin SV for like illicit reasons a few years ago. And Bitcoin SV is like a way larger block size. So you're able to put more information in there. But now with like the ordinals overtime window being broken and being able to load more information on Bitcoin, it was there beforehand, but now it's like much more accessible. I think you'll see more of this happen. And it's a pretty good like fist up against the government. I do wonder what happens though if there's like a bunch of illicit images just continuously loaded on top of Bitcoin, or like other things people don't want being pasted up there. there's already like a lot of pornographic stuff that is put up on ordinals, which is like not great. And I think most of the explorers kind of block those things out. But if it does get into like the government land of like posting secretive information or things like the Pentagon leaks by accident onto Bitcoin, that could be an interesting test of Bitcoin security. Matt?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting story, I think, and I don't think it's that surprising because there is like a cross section and culture of like Julian Assange kind of set out to combat a censorship of information sort of thing, right? And Bitcoin, like by its nature, was kind of built to combat censorship of people spending, right? And so it's like kind of interesting that the information from Assange is kind of being put into the chain. It's I mean, yeah, Bitcoin is built as a monetary system, but as we know, the blockchain is essentially just a database that's shared, right? And as history has put it, people have written things into the chain. This is kind of like a different use case, and as you said, it's even easier now post Taproot with kind of using the ordinal system. People use op return in the past. That's like a fixed 80 byte field, but the witness data can be, the entire block, which is significantly larger, on the megabytes level. But yeah, I mean, people put messages that they like strongly believe in into Bitcoin because it is that immutable, resilient time chain. And so people put Bible verses in. There's like a transaction you can get rickrolled and you could see the entire song lyrics, right? And now you can see the Afghan war logs. And so, I mean, this is something that I think is going to continue. And if people feel strongly enough about a message, want it to persist forever, why not stick it in a block, right? Even though that's not necessarily the purpose of Bitcoin. If you pay for it, it'll be there.
Lovely. Okay, let's talk about another novel use of Bitcoin. So we have ordinals earlier in this year, and we have BitVM as of this week. Sort of feels like we're entering into a Bitcoin renaissance of sorts, where people are looking at Bitcoin in a different lens. It's from Robin Linus. It's also with the Zero Sync team. Zero Sync is a really interesting project trying to compress the download speed of Bitcoin node, and then also how much information you need to store for a Bitcoin node using zero knowledge proofs. And they actually have a running implementation right now that you can try if you just go to the zerosync.org website. But this week, Robin threw out into the wild BitVM, a white paper talking about how Bitcoin can be used as a general computation engine, if you will, just running. Well, actually, I'm going to hand it to Matt because I feel like you did a pretty good high-level interview or overview earlier. But the idea is like we can run any sort of program on top of Bitcoin with some certain limitations and inefficiencies.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to pretend like I fully understand how this works, but like the idea at least is to create kind of a fully expressive smart contracting system akin to like Ethereum or sort of other smart contracting chains, but on Bitcoin in kind of like a different fashion, right? Instead of having like an EVM type thing, you use the capabilities of Taproot and you use what's called TapScript trees, right? And a lot of the actual like data and kind of logic of these things happen off chain, right? Between different parties that then agree to commit on some type of transaction and do that using Taproot, right? And if somebody commits to kind of like a false state, the other person has the opportunity to sweep the funds of this kind of like contract happening off chain, right? In a similar way, I guess, to how Lightning works in a way, right? Where if somebody tries to commit to an older state, the other person has a revocation key and they can sweep the funds of the channel. So I don't necessarily think this is like going to happen tomorrow. I don't know how much demand there even is for it within the Bitcoin ecosystem, right? People have, for years thought that the kind of smart contracting capabilities and kind of fashion of other chains and use cases weren't worth it, right, in the Bitcoin space. And it seems like there's definitely some like holes in actually trying to implement this, and it's kind of just more of a theory put out there to see what people think about it for now. But it'll be interesting to see. To me, it's kind of like a symptom of Taproot, and when there's a soft fork on Bitcoin, new tools come up a year or two later with new developer capabilities, and people willing to test and try new things is exciting, right? And it's encouraging for the future of Bitcoin to have developers that care enough to come up with these ideas and put them out there in the world.
Yeah, like you said, I'm not going to act like I'm an expert because this is very new. I hadn't had a chance, but I think it was today that Stefan Oliveira released his podcast with I already forgot his name again.
Robin.
Robin, yeah.
And way to shill another podcast on my show. You should focus on this show.
Have you had Robin on your podcast?
He was supposed to come on the show before he dropped this, and then since he's been impossible to contact because
I'm his replacement. Awesome.
Tatum is his replacement. He was supposed to come on and talk about zero sync like earlier this month, and then he dropped this white paper, and I haven't heard from him since because
I could understand.
A celebrity.
Yeah.
I
think it's a cool implementation because it's no forks, hard or soft. It's basically using what's already there. And like you said with Taproot, you're confirming things on chain. From my understanding, the everything happens off chain, and then that confirmation is on chain. And I think there's a lot of implementations that can happen with like maybe some types of dynamic escrows or something like that. But yeah, like you said, I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow or anything, but I think it would be really cool just to see like, hey, by the way, if you do get into Bitcoin, we have this that you can do. Maybe it will help your business or something. I don't know. Maybe it might just end up being a fun thing. I'm definitely going to be playing around with it though, just because I want to know.
You're going to play around with zero knowledge proofs?
Yeah, just casually. You know?
That is impressive. Tatum, you brought up this Bitcoin Illustrated, so we threw it up on the image here. So if you're watching on YouTube, this is great. If you're listening on audio, definitely go check out Bitcoin Illustrated on their Twitter page. It's just like a rough breakdown what's happening here. Essentially, we use logic gates within computers or computer programs to be able to move from inputs to outputs. And this Bitcoin VM allows us to use logic gates in a more expressive manner to be able to build whole constructs and whole applications. We've seen a few people talking about this so far. There is a dedicated Telegram group chat for this, and to be frank, most of the people who seem to be conversational in this are PhDs in comp sci, so it's pretty technical stuff. Not a lot of people can talk about this, which is sort of like the bottleneck for a lot of programming discussions, right? Like even like SegWit, Taproot, like the only people who can really talk about it on a high level are people who are very deep into comp sci stuff. On the other side, though, for mining aspect, I think we should devote a few seconds towards that. If there does become a point where you can have general computation on top of Bitcoin, even just a little bit more than present, that does open up the gateway for more Bitcoin fees, like more transaction fees, right? If people are able to build whole constructs, maybe it's some sort of like sidechain ecosystem where you can have different tokens on that network, or you have some sort of escrow service that's completely on chain and it's a little bit more feasible. Federated sidechains was something I saw talked about. Just even like some sort of like very basic DeFi primitive on top of Bitcoin. That does open the way for more dedicated Bitcoin apps. And those apps are going to have to settle in Bitcoin, which brings more fees down to the base layer for Bitcoin miners. So I think if you're a Bitcoin miner, you should be paying attention to this for that reason. Tweeted about that a little bit this week. I tweeted about how like Riot platforms now made a lot of money with just their energy hedging strategy in Texas. But just wait until we have more expressive contracts on top of Bitcoin. If people want to settle on top of Bitcoin, including financial constructs, then these miners are just going to make a ton of money. So I think that's something to watch going into the future. Okay, we can leave that there unless you guys have any other thoughts.
Yeah, more fees good for miners.
It is
Fee
good for miners.
fee market, baby.
Okay. Last topic for today. This came out this morning from the New York Times. Quote headline: across U.S., Chinese Bitcoin mines draw national security scrutiny. Subheadline: Microsoft reported one site in Wyoming because of its proximity to a data center. Ugh, retake that. Microsoft reported one site in Wyoming because of its proximity to a data center and nuclear missile base. Records show other cryptocurrency facilities have ties to the Chinese state. I thought this article was like kind of complete bullshit, but I want to hear what you guys think first, and then we can go through it a little bit more. This is a pretty funny story, though. Like, it had regulatory capture, it had like a underlying racist tones to it, which were not acknowledged. It branched between multiple different industries and just confused a lot of people. And whoever is going to look at this article is going to be like, yeah, this is totally a danger to national security, but it's just wrong. I'll give it to you first, Tatum.
I hate using the term FUD, but at the same time, like we're at that point still where like people who don't know what they're talking about are publishing these articles to literally New York Times. And like you said, it's just like complete bullshit. I haven't read the entire thing. You're scrolling through it and it's long as hell. But I do want to kind of go through and dissect it later, and because like it's a nothing burger. They're making it like, I'm surprised they wrote an article this long about something that I don't think has any validity, any sort of concern.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything too exciting that y'all haven't covered, but like basically the concern is that miners use a lot of energy. A lot of energy runs through Bitmain machines. Bitmain is a manufacturer that has a lot of connection to China, right? There could be some kinds of deals between the CCP and Bitmain to try to put some kind of backdoor in. You can kind of jump through the hoops and see where this is going, but there's like the concern of the article is sort of that these the mining software could essentially cause some damage to like key infrastructure in the states, specifically this mine that's in Wyoming near an Air Force base and some Microsoft data centers, right? That may or may not have sensitive information. Yeah, I mean, I think like the glaring kind of point here is that if there's like cybersecurity holes and problems in our Air Force and or Microsoft, first of all, Microsoft, like how close to private industry are we getting here with our intelligence information? But that's beside the fact. If there's like cybersecurity problems, maybe we should like just fix those. That seems to be a pretty solid solution. But yeah, I guess interesting article nonetheless. It's always good to read what Bitcoin is viewed on and talked about in kind of more public discourse, right, outside of kind of the industry bubble that we live in, at least to be aware of it.
No, some good points. Yeah, just like the premise of the article, of course, is that there's Chinese miners here in the U.S. Those Chinese miners are buying up land and property that is adjacent to Air Force bases or other like data computing centers, and that could be a threat to national security. They also mentioned it could be a negative on grid infrastructure. I think they go as far in this article to talk about how these Bitcoin miners, these Chinese Bitcoin miners, could be pushed by the CCP to pull too much energy from the national grid and then collapse the U.S. energy grid, which is just hilarious.
That's honestly, that's a great
amazing
plot for like a comic book or something.
It is. It's pretty amazing. The funniest part to me is like the foundational piece for this, which both of you guys called out, is Microsoft put together a report and sent it to the Pentagon. I think it was like the Department of War or something like that in this case, and said, hey, we have a concern about this. Like, we have a concern about this from a national security level. when at its very basic for Microsoft, it's about the cost, right? If you have a Bitcoin miner who's next door and they can always purchase energy cheaper than you because they're just going to buy at the lowest level, then you have competition, right? You have someone else who's coming in and purchasing energy, and you want that energy for yourself, for your own computation, because they're getting into AI and GPUs and all that stuff. So it's completely about capture, market capture. And then a huge corporation like Microsoft, that's an American brand name, can spin it around and be like, oh, there's these Chinese people in our backyard running these huge supercomputers, and they're going to nuke your Air Force Academy or your Air Force Base. I don't know how this made it into a New York Times article. I guess we shouldn't be too skeptical about that these days. They just kind of seem to run things about Bitcoin mining whenever they have the topic about it, because it's not well done. Like, I definitely go read the whole thing. There's some crazy stuff in here. I'll close with this quote from Matthew Pines. He said, quote, on Twitter, "If I had a massive data center AI business that was competing for power with Bitcoin miners, boy, would I like to get the New York Times to write a long article connecting them to CCTP, cyber super spies, and casting them as a critical national security threat." Just saying.
I love working in an industry that's a national security threat.
Me too. Okay, we'll close out there. Thank you both for joining. Those are 4 stories from Bitcoin mining this week. If you enjoyed that, give us a sub on YouTube at Blockspace Media, or give us a 5-star review on your podcasting platform of choice. You can also give us an email at william@blockspace.media. Give Tatum and Matt a follow on Twitter. Their handles are in the show notes below. See you guys.